What's up? What's up? What's up? Let me know if you guys can hear me in the live chat. Shout out to everybody locked in. If you can all stick a like on this stream, it really will help with visibility. We've got 125 concurrent viewers. If we can get like 60 likes, we've got 30 so far. Okay, I can be heard loud and clear. There's quite a few people in here already. So as I say, shout out to everybody. I won't be able to big everyone up, but let's talk about this press conference. In fact, before I give my take on this press conference, I'm going to ask for your take on it. You guys, I'm going to read what you're saying in the live chat. So let's just do a recap for those who maybe didn't catch the press conference. There was a lot of back and forth between Eubank Jr. and Eddie Hearn. Eubank Jr. basically didn't want Eddie Hearn to talk at all. And the kind of jibes you would expect from these two were flying back and forth. Eubank Jr. making jibes about Conor Benn's PED issue, talking about the fact he hasn't really beaten anyone. He hasn't fought at the same level that Eubank Jr.'s fought at. And Conor Benn was making jibes about Eubank Jr. losing every time he steps up, about how his own dad don't even like him, so on and so forth. Eubank Jr. was also talking about this fight being a battle between two villains, two fighters who get booed. Eubank Jr. has been booed all his career. He kept going on about that. And Conor Benn, since the PED issue, has become a villain as well and has caught the wrath of the British public. So that was the press conference in a nutshell. There was even some back and forth between Ben Shalom and Eddie Hearn over the rehydration clause and why it's in there and who wanted it, etc., etc. And then after the press conference was done, they had the face-off, and Eubank Jr. had his arms out in front of him in kind of an unusual fashion. So you felt like something was up. And what was going on is he was actually concealing an egg in his hand, which he was getting ready to crack on the side of Conor Benn's face. So you can see them here getting closer and closer. Eubank Jr. kind of hunched over. And then Eubank lashes out like this with the egg in his left hand. You can see the yolk there on Conor Benn falling down off his face. And this is a different screenshot. This is from Fight Hub TV. You can see a close-up shot of all the yolk of the egg flying out there. All right. So, as I say, before I give my take on this press conference, I want to get your take. I want to know what you guys thought of it all. Okay. So I'm going to just pop out the live chat here and read your comments. So let's see. So Cal says he knocked the yolk out of Conor Hen. All right, nice one there. Rayman's game plan says, come on, guys, stop egging him on. All right, so we're getting all the egg puns coming in. Extreme behavior from Eubank. Francis says, Eubank living in Ben's head rent-free. Chris Santos says, what is Conor's favorite Beastie Boys song? The Eggman. What's it to you says, Conor Hen is hilarious, bro. Conroy can't take a little yolk. All right. Aggravated assault, says the Gwinner. Jumperton says, lads, pause the IFL video at 148 to see Conor Benn's eggy face. All right. So, all the egg puns aside, what did you guys think of the actual press conference? Shout out to Scars. Jimbo Jones says it was hilarious. I'm buying a ticket for sure. Eddie Hearn seemed rattled. Oh, yeah, Nigel Benn was there, obviously. And, he said a few bits and pieces here and there, chimed in a little bit. Robert Wilson says, Eubank had Benn on a piece of string, pulling him whichever way he wanted to. A Wave says, I wasn't interested in the fact, I guess you meant the fight, at all, but it completely sold me on buying a ticket. Boxing Media TV says, Eubank reminiscent of Hay when he said, this ain't the Eddie Hearn show. People finding it funny that Eddie Hearn was going off on Ben Shalom. People saying, okay. Wayne says, I'm invested. Light Star says, I'm confused where the fight is happening. Ade saying Manchester, but the sign says Tottenham Stadium. I guess the press events are in Manchester. Maybe that's what. Or actually, no. There's two press events. There's a press event, or there was a press event in Manchester today. And then I think there's another press event in Tottenham later on in the week. So I think that's what it was referring to. Okay, so the vibe I'm getting here is that most people really like the presser and they're looking forward to the fight now. Even some people who weren't particularly excited for this fight now are, because they enjoyed the presser so much. That seems to be the general consensus. We've got only one comment that I've seen so far saying that the presser was kind of dead. Pro Cala says Junior was boring in the presser, but the egg bit made it exciting. Ben looked genuinely angry. I think it's gone past the point of selling a fight for him. Shout out to Workstation for the super chat. He says, Eggs Ben addict. Nice one. Went from hard to runny in seconds. Boom, boom. Parliamentary schooling, says Jammer. Truth Seeker says, Eubank is a genius with the egg slap. Ocean Blue says, I honestly can't be bothered. Luke Fury says, I enjoyed the egging, but I'm still not that excited unless Eubank breaches the dehydration clause. Yeah, let me throw a little pun in here. A terrible one. I've always felt as though this fight is contrived, that they're forcing it. And with the stunt pulled at the presser today, I feel like they're over-egging the pudding. They're over-egging the pudding. And truth be told, right, you guys have given your take on the presser. You liked it. I thought that the presser was completely lacking in energy. I thought it was boring. I thought the only exciting bit, I agree with Pro Cala, the only bit that remotely entertained me was the egg slap at the end. Up until that point, I was just twiddling my thumbs and I was like, oh, this is so contrived. This is so boring. This is such a manufactured beef. Lab grown. Shout out to Mr. Prodigal Chung for the super chat. He says, them light skinned man reminded me of Hey Chisora. Well, in Hey Chisora, there was only one light skinned guy. But shout out to you for the super chat. Guryon says, agree with Hatman. Whole thing comes across as tedious and choreographed. Two irrelevant fighters. I mean, at the start of the press conference, Ade actually had to whip the audience up into some excitement because there was no energy in the room. And that's how I felt throughout. There was just no energy. It's just so dead to me. Because when you force a beef, when you force a rivalry, when you force a fight like this, when it's not organic, then yeah, the energy is going to be dead. Do I think that, okay, there's somebody saying that's not lab-grown beef, lab-grown, it's real beef? I completely disagree. I think it's lab-grown beef. I mean, when you grow beef in a lab, you end up with beef, yes, some form of beef. And so here, yeah, there's some form of tension between the two sides, but it was manufactured. It didn't come around organically. It's like a manufactured beef, lab-grown. And so it just doesn't have the same, excitement for me that a genuine beef has. And I know how cynical boxing fans tend to be. Even when there's, I mean, literally every single press conference beef, slap, brawl, boxing rivalry will have people in the comment section of videos claiming it's all fake. Now, this is a sport where people are punching each other in the face. They're literally, trying to beat each other unconscious. There's a lot of testosterone, a lot of ego. The idea that every single beef in a sport like that would be fake is ridiculous. Of course, there are loads of real beefs between fighters in boxing. But because beef sells, we all know that, controversy sells, beef sells, then there's obviously also a lot of fake beefs in boxing. The promoters get behind it. Even the fighters themselves have become promoters. They understand how to push pay-per-views and ticket sales and all that. We need to create a bit of controversy. We need to make it look like we hate each other even if we actually don't. And in my view, that's how the rivalry between these two started out, as a fake beef, as a manufactured beef. Piggybacking off what their dads had, which was real, or certainly more real than what the sons have. But at this stage, is there some real animosity between them due to the jibes back and forth and all that? Well, yeah, maybe to some extent, but as I say, it hasn't come around organically. And for me, the energy just still feels forced between Ben Shalom and Eddie Hearn and the fighters, and yeah. But I might be in the minority judging by what's been said here in the live chat, and that's okay. If you guys like it, if this has sold you guys on the fight, then who am I to say that you shouldn't find it entertaining? If you find it entertaining, it's absolutely fine. Got no issue with it. If this is what the public want, if this is what the public like, so be it. Shout out to Mr. Prodigal Chung for the super chat again. He says, did you see Big Ben get his hands on Chris's neck? I didn't actually see that. I'm sure the pictures will be everywhere. I take it you're talking about Nigel Benn getting his hands on Chris Eubank Jr.'s neck rather than the dad's. Because back in the days, Nigel might have got his hands around Chris Eubank Sr.'s neck such a long time ago. Scars says, nah, Hatman, Nigel hated Chris and Chris knew how to wind him up. Yeah, I know. I'm not saying that their beef was fake. I'm saying their beef was real. The dad's beef was absolutely real. The son's beef is the manufactured one. So, for me, obviously, I'm going to cover the fight for my channel, for views and what have you. But if I didn't have a YouTube channel, I'm just going to be honest. If I didn't have a YouTube channel, I might not even watch this fight at all. That is how little interest I actually have in it. I will watch it for the sake of the channel and, you know, you guys want to hear my take. But if I didn't have this channel, I probably wouldn't be covering it. Just being honest. Shout out to Workstation for the super chat. He says, what's your opinion on the undercard? Truthfully, Riley versus Clark is the only fight that interests me. And also what condition Liam Smith is in. Well, I agree. Riley versus Clark is a fight I actually like. Yeah, I like that fight. I've been calling for that fight for years. And I'm glad it's now happening. So let me just take a look at the undercard here. Get it up on BoxRec. I'll give you my take. I think I have spoken about this in a video before. But it's been a while. So you got Eubank Jr., Conor Benn, obviously. You got Liam Smith versus Aaron McKenna. You know, Aaron McKenna, 19-0, unbeaten guy. Fighting out of Ireland. I shrug my shoulders. I'm not particularly interested in that fight. Anthony Yard versus Lyndon Arthur 3. I've got no interest in that. Billum Smith versus Brandon Glanton. I don't even know who that is. So I can't say I'm interested. And Vidal Riley versus Chev Clark, I am interested in that fight. That's probably the fight I'm most interested in on the whole card. Even more interested in that. Well, as I say, I'm not really interested in the main event at all. But yeah, that's the one fight I like. Riley versus Clark. I think that could be a bit of a sleeper. Not many people are paying attention to that one. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the undercard. Shout out for the super chat. CPB says, I felt that the beef between AJ and Dubois was manufactured. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, that was kind of like a manufactured beef. But with heavyweight fights, there's always a high chance of drama in the ring. So whether the beef outside the ring is manufactured or not, in the ring, you know that there's a decent possibility of a big knockout and so on and so forth. Carton says, not ashamed to say I'm interested in watching. Hey, that's all well and good. If you like the fight, you like the fight. I'm cool to fall back and be in the minority. No problem. Okay, some people are asking questions about other fights. You know, we can get on to that. I just wanted to cover this press conference first and the egg slap. Toro TV says, I don't understand why Eubank Sr. wasn't there. Maybe what Ben said about him is right. Well, Eubank Sr. has a YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, I recommend it. It's very entertaining and funny. And he made it pretty clear that he and his son are not on good terms. And his son did an interview a few months ago where he really opened up on the relationship with his dad, and they basically don't have a relationship at this stage. They barely talk to each other. So that's why the dad wasn't there. And the dad keeps saying, just like he did for the first fight, that this, well, I say first fight, the first scheduled date for the fight, which was a couple years ago, just like he did back then, he's also saying for this particular date that the fight's not going to happen. Which is very curious indeed, but this is what Eubank Sr. keeps saying. He's saying the fight's not going to happen. Make of that what you will. Did he have something to do with the first fight getting called off? Is he the one who leaked the failed Conor Benn test to the press? That's a question. Okay, Damien Omen says, Hatman, the winner has been promised Canelo. Yeah, I saw that, which is disappointing, but at the same time not surprising. Because Canelo seems to be going after these types of fights these days. dragging people up from lower weight classes and what have you. JR says, Hatman, do you have a pick on this fight yet? I'm praying for a Eubank win. Benn is a cockroach. I'll probably go with Eubank. And I'm basing that at least partly on Benn's performances in his last couple fights against light middleweights. He outworked them, but he wasn't able to hurt them. Wasn't able to get him out of there. So I think this fight is going the distance. Obviously, a knockout is possible, but in my head, I think a distance fight is more probable. I'm not sure how well Eubank Jr. will deal with Conor Benn's head movement, because Conor Benn does move his head pretty well and pretty consistently, and he's very physically fit. He's got good stamina, work rate, and all that. So I'm not sure how well Eubank will get the uppercuts off when Benn's constantly moving his head. Yeah, I'm anticipating a distance fight. And either Eubank wins on points or Benn wins on points. I would lean towards Eubank winning on points. So I did talk about the scoring for the Hamza Shiraz fight because some people are asking me about it here. I did talk about it in the live stream that I did. I did like a 7-hour live stream for that show. And I had Carlos Adames winning comfortably. Although I've seen some other people out there who, you know, like Dwyer and a few others. There was somebody who scored it a draw. I forget who it was now. Can't remember. I think Dwyer had Hamza Shiraz winning, and there was someone else, some boxing person who scored it a draw, which is kind of surprising to me. I thought Adames won big. I said before the fight that I expected bias from the officials in Hamza Shiraz's favor, and I think that's what we got. Again, boxing fans like this simplistic way of viewing fighters. So they're now saying Shiraz is a hype job. Again, there's more in boxing than just the real deal or a hype job. There's loads of shades of grey in between. Shiraz didn't go in there and get blasted out in a couple of rounds. You know, get punched all around the ring and dropped or anything like that. He lost the decision, in my opinion. I know it was officially a draw. He lost the decision to a champion who was just a bit too skilled for him. I know they're saying that Hamza Shiraz broke his right hand, but as I understand it, Hamza Shiraz is a converted southpaw. So his power hand is his left hand anyway. And as much as they say he broke his hand, he wasn't able to land his shots. You know, neither man was particularly dominant from an offensive perspective. You know, neither man did that much damage offensively. The difference between the two fighters was the defense. Hamza Shiraz just could not deal with Carlos Adames' head movement. And that was the difference in the fight. He was landing some nice jabs in the early going. Picked up some early rounds. But Adames managed to adjust and started, you know, ducking underneath the jab and taking the jab away. And Shiraz couldn't land any power shots, or very few power shots, because of Adames' head movement. And Adames was able to land a few more of his own shots than Shiraz. Shiraz's defense wasn't as effective as Adames' was. It wasn't a great fight, to be honest. It was an okay fight. And as I say, the defense of Adames is what made the difference. So that was it, really. I don't think it was, you know, it wasn't a case of Shiraz getting beaten up or anything. I don't think he was disgraced in the fight. It just turned out to be a bad style matchup for him, an awkward style matchup for him. And despite the dodgy decision, in my view, at least Adames walks away with his belt. It would have been a real travesty if they'd given Shiraz the decision and Adames had lost his title. Someone saying, or Cal says he's got no power. No, I think Shiraz does have power. But if you can't land the shots, then what are you going to do? Your power, you can't hit where you can't see. And every time Shiraz tried to open up, he was missing by a mile. Adames was rolling underneath the hooks. The shots that he normally lands that hurt people weren't landing on Adames. Now, Carlton Palmer says Shiraz looks scared to throw punches. Shiraz is a guy who likes to be accurate when he throws shots. And, he doesn't like to waste punches. He's not one of these volume guys who comes in throwing everything but the kitchen sink, or everything including the kitchen sink, who's willing to, take a few to land his own. That's not who Hamza Shiraz is. He's kind of like a Robert Garcia fighter, or many Robert Garcia fighters. Even Robert Garcia's younger brother, Mikey Garcia. When he fought Errol Spence, I remember people baffled as to why he wasn't throwing that many punches. And I wasn't baffled at all, because Mikey Garcia's always been like that. He's always been a guy who doesn't throw unless he's sure he's going to land. And he's trained that way and fought that way his whole career. You're not going to all of a sudden turn from being that, right? Your mind is kind of hardwired into fighting that way. You're not going to all of a sudden turn from being that to being this reckless volume guy, which is what people wanted Mikey Garcia to be midway through the Errol Spence fight. Similar situation with Hamza Shiraz. He's not like a reckless volume guy. He's somebody who doesn't like to throw unless he's sure he's going to land. And after Adames made him miss a few times with the head movement and countered him, then Shiraz was like, okay, well, I need to do something to stop the head movement, or wait for the right time when he's not moving his head before I throw again. But it's like every time he tried to let his hooks go, he was missing. So that made him feel uncomfortable. And I think he was just stuck in that mode mentally, where he just won't throw shots unless he is sure they're going to land. So yeah, Adames's head movement made him feel anxious. I guess you could say that's the same as saying he was scared to throw punches, but he wasn't scared to throw punches for no reason, or because of Adames's power, because I don't think Adames really hits that hard. He caught Shiraz clean a few times and he never really seemed to trouble him. I just think it's more like a mental block for Shiraz. When the shots aren't landing, again, he's used to landing on people, and he's used to only throwing when he's sure he's going to land. So when those opportunities are not there, he's got this like mental block where he can't just throw volume. But shout out to Adam for the super chat. He says, Beterbiev and Bivol versus Andre Ward. They're both very interesting fights. Really hard to pick for me. Who would have a better chance against, or who would Ward have a better chance against, Beterbiev or Bivol? The thing about Andre Ward, which is really underestimated and not often talked about, is that Andre Ward, hang on, my screen here is messing up. All right, let's just fix that. Yeah, the thing about Andre Ward, which is not often talked about. Okay, I can't see the live chat at the moment, folks. I'm going to have to reset this. 1 second. Yeah, my browser is doing all sorts of nonsense at the minute. So we have to wait for it to right itself. Hopefully you can still hear me. So, yeah, Andre Ward, the thing that people often underestimate about him is his physical strength. Ward was tremendously physically strong, particularly at 168. And one of the reasons that people are kind of thrown off by that is because he wasn't a puncher. See, people tend to assume that if you're physically strong, like very physically strong, stronger than most other fighters in your weight class, then you must be a puncher, right? They think the two things go hand in hand. But actually, that's not the case at all. There are many fighters with great physical strength who are not good punchers. And Andre Ward certainly fit into that category. And he used this physical strength to apply or use what some people refer to as dirty boxing, you know, up close, mauling and brawling and all this type of stuff. And that was very much part of his game. Artur Beterbiev, of course, is also tremendously physically strong. I have to imagine he's stronger than Andre Ward. So I'll probably pick Beterbiev over Ward because I don't think Ward will be able to impose his strength the way he would want to. Bivol, Ward would be able to impose his strength, but would he be able to deal with his speed? Because Bivol's so fast, he's so technically good. I might pick Beterbiev and Bivol, both of them over Ward at light heavyweight. Ward's best weight was really 168. So I don't think there are many at 168 who would have beaten him. There are some who I'd pick, but not many over the decades. But at 175, I might pick Beterbiev and Bivol both to beat Ward. I know some people were going to say that's blasphemy because Ward never lost in the ring, but just because you never saw something happen doesn't mean it couldn't have happened. Shout out to Grizz for the super chat. Big up every time. Much appreciated, my bro. Boxing Minds or Box Mind says Shiraz had some dodgy decisions. He lost to Bradley Skeet. Well, that was one dodgy decision, yeah. Well, decision. Did that fight was stopped, right? So it was. I need to remind myself on BoxRec for a second. I swear the fight was stopped controversially, wasn't it? Let me remind myself here. This was several years ago. Yeah, it was stopped controversially in the 9th round. But there was a contentious incident in the fight. So in terms of scorecards, he's had one dodgy scorecard, which was in the Adames fight. But as I say, there were other people. I mean, somebody there said that Teddy Atlas scored the fight either a draw or in favor of Shiraz. Maybe I need to go watch it back. Maybe it was closer than I thought it was watching it live. But as I say, watching it live, I thought Adames won clearly. I thought he just outboxed Hamza Shiraz. Totally outboxed him. Boxing is the art of hitting and not getting hit. And I just thought Adames's defense, his head movement was too much for Hamza Shiraz to keep up with. Yeah, all of the fights from this Saturday's card are on Turkey's channel. He actually put the entire show from start to finish in one video, as well as putting the fights in separate videos. So he's covering all bases. It was literally a 7-hour video on Turkey's channel of the whole show, start to finish. And he's also put the fights up on Ring Magazine's YouTube channel. So there's no end of places where you can watch all the fights from the weekend. Just making sure I got all the super chats here. 1 second. Yeah, read them all so far. Shout out to everyone who's donated via Super Chat. Urban Analysis talking about the Adame Shiraz fight. He says they both boxed well, in my opinion, but Shiraz was scared to take risks. If you're scared of losing, you've already lost. Yeah, he just got, as I say, outboxed. Adame is a tricky customer, and he was too tricky for Shiraz. Scar says, so Hatman, who do you think will be a good fight for Buatsi in his next fight? I think Anthony Yarde. I mean, Yarde better not start acting stush now. Acting like he's too good for the Buatsi fight, like the Buatsi fight is beneath him now. He better not start behaving like that. Because he looked terrible in his last fight against an unknown. I mean, how would he fare against Callum Smith? So I don't want to hear no funny talk from Anthony Yarde about, oh, Buatsi's below me now. No. You look terrible in your last fight against the guy who was put in there to be blasted out. Wasn't anywhere near Callum Smith's level. And I'm telling you, that fight was a lot closer than the referee's scorecard had it. Way closer. We're talking about favorable scoring or bias scoring. Well, that was bias scoring in favor of Anthony Yarde. That fight was way closer than the official scorecard. It was the ref that scored it, right? In the UK, there are fights like below British title level where the referee is the only judge. They don't have 3 judges at ringside for particular fights, for certain fights. Yes. Shout out to Warren Williams. Indeed, if we could all stick a like on the live stream, it really helps with visibility. I like to keep the, as I always say, the views to likes ratio around 50%. We've got 569 concurrent viewers. So we need to have at least, let's say, 275 likes. We're on 191 likes at the moment. If you can all stick a like on it, only takes a moment, a split second. It would be much appreciated. Okay, Gunn says, I think Yarde would do well against Callum Smith because of his superior punching power than Buatsi has. Okay. I thought that Callum Smith looked very good. I thought he looked revitalized. You see, going into the Buatsi fight, I thought Callum Smith was semi-retired. I don't think he had much motivation left for boxing. So I expected Buatsi to go in there and bully him and maybe take a decision. But it was the opposite way. I mean, not that Buatsi lacks for motivation, but Callum Smith was ultra motivated. I mean, he was fired up in there. The combinations on the inside, the body punching, I thought was fantastic. I haven't seen him look that sharp for years. So, yeah, Callum Smith looked very, very good in there. I'd have to pick him over Anthony Yarde. Again, let's not forget Anthony Yarde's last performance. We might be thinking of the Anthony Yarde from years ago, but let's think of the Anthony Yarde of recent. And the Anthony Yarde of recent has not looked good at all. I'm going to get the name of that guy. All right, bring up his box rec here. So Ralph's Vilkans is who Anthony Yarde fought in October last year. He won it on points. Referee Victor Loughlin scored it wide in favor of Yarde. That was absurd. So he only gave Vilkans 2 rounds in the fight. Absolutely ridiculous. The commentary didn't help, but obviously the referee wasn't influenced by the commentary. He was in the ring. But seriously, folks, go back and watch that fight if it's still up on YouTube. There is no way the Vilkans only won 2 rounds. I'm not saying he deserved to win the fight, but it was way closer than that. It was actually competitive. Anthony Yarde was getting hit with combinations. Literally getting his head bounced around at various points during that fight. What happens when Callum Smith is hitting him with those same combinations? I'm telling you, Callum Smith hits a lot harder than Ralph Vilkans. And he's a much better combination puncher than Vilkans is. Maybe Yarde will be more up for the fight and therefore perform better. Well, he would need to. Because if he performed the way he did against Vilkans versus Callum Smith, he gets stopped, I think. Now, Kylie says Yarde fights to the level of his opponent. He may, but whether that's enough to defeat Callum Smith is another thing. Let's see how he looks against Lyndon Arthur. And I'm just going to tell you my perception of Lyndon Arthur. I think he's a diminished force. Am I underestimating him the way I underestimated Callum Smith? We'll see. But again, that's my current perception. I think he is diminished. Not that Lyndon Arthur was ever great, but, you know, he was a decent Euro-level fighter. All right, Don Gorgon says, I don't think Yarde punches as hard as people think he does. How many clean shots did he have on Kovalev? That's a good point. Kovalev, the guy who was knocked out by Alida Alvarez. Badly knocked out by Alida Alvarez, right? That was before the Yarde fight. 2 fights before. Because he had an immediate rematch with Alida Alvarez and beat him on the scorecards. So, if Yarde was as big a puncher as people think, how come his shots didn't have the same effect on Kovalev that Alvarez's shots did? Alida Alvarez. And then obviously after the Yarde fight, he gets sparked out by Canelo, who's moving up from 168. So I would tend to agree with that. Yarde, as Encircled says, is a flashy, sharp puncher, but I don't think he hits that hard. Josh Campbell says, how do you see Smith Benavidez going? I see Benavidez winning. I think Benavidez is actually very good. He's got a creative offense. His defense is improving. He's got tremendous work rate and stamina. He's got a great jab. Very good body puncher. Yeah, I see Benavidez beating Callum Smith. Waved says, Yarde looked better than Callum against Beterbiev. Yeah, well, Yarde has movement that Callum doesn't have, right? So he could move out of the way for a few rounds. Whereas Callum Smith was like a potted plant. Styles make fights and all that. How would Yarde fight Callum Smith? Would he try and move around for 12? Because if he starts swapping shots on the inside, I see Smith getting the better of it. And also, I think that Buatsi... I mean, Yarde hasn't shown to have a weak chin. Shout out to Chris for the super chat. Yarde has never shown to have a weak chin. But I don't think his stamina is the best. Just like Buatsi's stamina ain't the best. So at some point, I would expect Callum Smith to be able to unleash on Anthony Yarde. And is Anthony Yarde getting better? Has he actually deteriorated since the Beterbiev fight? What do you guys think? Has Anthony Yarde deteriorated? He's had 3 fights since he lost to Beterbiev in January of 2023. 3 fights since then. All against obscure opponents. The first 2 were blowouts against a guy called Jorge Silva, another guy called Marko Nikolic. Early blowouts, meaningless fights. Then he fought Ralph Vilkans, who was also obscure, but actually came to give it a go and try and win. And Yarde had a really tough time. Never mind what the referee's scorecard says on BoxRec. You go watch the fight, he had a very tough time. He was getting hit so often and so clean and trying to style it out. Unlocking Faith says, how do you think Yarde would do against Bivol? I think he'd get his head boxed off. I don't think he'd win more than 1 or 2 rounds against Bivol. Just my opinion. Yes, shout out to Fight Sport Talk in the chat. Big up every time. Gunn says, I was very disappointed in Buatsi's lack of footwork. That's what lost him the fight, in my opinion. He was always there to be hit. He was too. His offense was very basic, lacked imagination, lacked creativity. And his defense was pretty poor as well. As you say, the lack of footwork. He was trying to roll his upper body. And early on in the fight, he was able to take the sting off Callum Smith's right hands, but Smith's body attack was what really got him in front, which is what really allowed Smith's body attack is what allowed him to take control of the fight, because he was hitting Buatsi in the body so much that actually stopped Buatsi's head movement. Someone says there was no head movement. Well, there actually was head movement from Buatsi early. If you notice, he was rolling with shots and what have you. But he was getting hit in the body so much that took the head movement away. Because it can literally paralyze you, when you're getting hit with body shots like that. He basically body punched Joshua Buatsi to a near standstill. Fight Sport Talk says, Callum Smith proved me wrong. Buatsi looked kind of novice-like. I completely agree. Leo Mack says, do you think Buatsi can make 168? He looked a lot smaller than Smith. Not at all. He can't make 168. He's too big for 168. Smith was just enormous at super middleweight. God knows how he made it. Paul McAllister says, what do you make of the rumors that Dubois popped dirty and that's why he pulled out? Well, they're unsubstantiated. I need to see some evidence. Anyone can say anything, right? So, people are saying that Brazil is full of PEDs and that's why Dubois has been going over to Brazil. But there's not really much to go on, is there? I mean, loads of people go to Brazil for all sorts of different reasons. So, unless there's actual evidence, then I can't tell you it's definitely not true. But I've seen no evidence that it is true either. So, it's just stuff people say online. Spark says maybe that explains Dubois' good stamina. Well, Dubois had good stamina. Loads of fighters have good stamina without being on PEDs. So I don't see why you would need PEDs to explain his good stamina. It's not like he used to have bad stamina and then all of a sudden it became good. No, he's always had good stamina. From early on in his career, he was able to fight, 10 rounds at a good clip and not get tired. So was he on PEDs then too? I mean, the guy's been an athlete his whole life, right? His dad raised him to be a boxer when he was a little boy, and he's been training the whole time. I've never seen him out of shape. Kind of like Usyk, right? Usyk has been in shape his whole life. He's a pure athlete. Fight Sport Talk says, I go to Brazil for the ladies. Yeah, a lot of people do. Leo Max says, what did you make of Hamza Shiraz? Spoke about it earlier on in the stream, Lee. So if you rewind a few minutes, you'll hear me talking about it. I also spoke about it in my live commentary, obviously, for the fight, which is still up on the channel. And, oh yeah, by the way, those of you who are not aware of my second channel, for your convenience, if you want to listen to the commentary for a specific fight from Saturday, I've edited the commentary into, one video per fight, and I've uploaded it onto my second channel. My second channel is called Hatman Boxing Live. So if you just want to listen to a specific fight commentary that I did, be it the Shiraz fight, the, Parker Bacoli, the main event between Bivol and Beterbiev, any other fights on there, they're on my second channel in individual videos. So you don't have to scroll through the whole 7-hour live stream on this channel to find what you're looking for. So check out Hatman Boxing Live, my second channel. Waved says, why was Eddie so happy when Buatsi lost? Well, Callum Smith is his fighter, so he would be happy, right? And also Buatsi left him. So, 2 reasons. Spark says, thoughts on Shakur Stevenson? I'd rather not think about Shakur Stevenson, to be honest. Excruciatingly boring. In fact, miraculously, I came across something which was even more boring, or just as boring as paint drying or watching Shakur Stevenson yesterday. I watched a film called The Monkey. It's allegedly a comedy horror, all right? That is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most boring film I've seen, certainly for many, many decades, possibly in my entire life. Unbelievably boring. And it weren't just me. I was in a cinema watching that film. And myself and about 25 other people walked out halfway through. Because it was that boring. A comedy horror. I mean, I like comedy horror. But the comedy in that film was just literally not funny. It was this really forced, stereotypical middle America sarcasm, which has been done to death in Marvel films and Deadpool and stuff like that. And so they were trying to run with that type of comedy and those type of quote unquote jokes from the beginning of the film. But nobody, I'm telling you, I was in a cinema full of people and nobody laughed at any of the jokes. It was just awful. Oh, it was terrible. So yeah, The Monkey, avoid. Absolute garbage. Hibbert says, how is Brixton, Hatman? I miss England. I haven't lived in Brixton since the early 2000s, and I left England several years ago, so I couldn't tell you. And I don't miss it. I enjoy the warm weather. But yeah, The Monkey, what a terrible film. I mean, Hollywood is dead on his backside right now. I agree with Guryon. He says, boring films are worse than bad films. Bad films can at least be entertaining. Yeah. This film was just unbelievably boring. All of the humor just felt so... I've used the word contrived too much in this live stream, but it was just not funny. Nobody laughed. A cinema full of people and no one was laughing at any of the obvious gags. It was so rubbish. Guryon says Marvel humor is so cringe. I agree. It's so played out. It's kind of played out sarcasm. It's just so dead now. Only girls think that stuff is funny at this point, you know? They don't seem tired of it yet. I think most men are just like, unless you're like a super normie or something who's got like a really unsophisticated sense of humor, everyone's tired of the Marvel sarcasm. It's just so dead, man. Bexy says, worse than The Matrix 4? Yes, worse than The Matrix 4. The Matrix 4 was awful, woke, horrible CGI. I mean, it was an awful movie. But as someone said earlier on, because it was so bad, there were actually moments that made you laugh. Unintentional humor, you know? But The Monkey had nothing. It was all... It was intended to be funny, but it just simply wasn't. It was a shocker. Robbo Robert says, I walked out of The Matrix 4. I watched The Matrix 4 online. I never went to a cinema to watch it. G-Man says it's a glorified YouTube boxing match. He's talking about Eubank Jr., Conor, Benn. Glorified YouTube boxing match. The egg made it even more so. Chainsaw says, why is there a new Matrix trailer as Will Smith as Neo? You sure it's not fan-made? Because believe it or not, Will Smith was supposed to be the original Neo. Did you know that? He actually got offered the role as Neo and turned it down. And of course, his wife appeared in the Matrix films, Jada Pinkett. I mean, first of all, whoever it was that went after, that headhunted Will Smith to play Neo, whether it was the Wachowski brothers, I'm going to call them brothers, but you know, the Wachowski brothers or some executives at the studio, shame on them, because Will Smith as Neo would have been diabolical. Like, seriously, that would have been diabolical. Will Smith did us all a favor by turning that role down. That would have been shocking. I just can't take Will Smith seriously, you know? To me, he's Will from The Fresh Prince, and that's the way I always see him. Bexy says, Hatman, would you date Will Smith's wife? Hell no. Why would I want to date her? Hell no. Some old sketel. No, thank you. Callie says Lawrence Fishburne would have acted him off the screen. Indeed. I just don't watch Will Smith films, you know? I don't like them. I don't like him on screen. I just find him lightweight. I liked him in The Fresh Prince, but that's it. LeBierre says, do you think most fans view light-skinned boxers like Benn and Eubank as soft? Maybe in America. They've got that kind of stereotype in America. But in the UK, no, I don't think so. I think that's more of like a Black America thing. Star Fox says Jada Pinkett Sket, yeah, that's what she is, right? What kind of woman, what kind of mother, middle-aged mother is sleeping with her son's friends? Like, dear, oh dear, oh dear. Black Dynamite says Will Smith played an African doctor a couple years ago and he had the worst accent. I can imagine. I don't understand why they even hire Black American actors to play Africans. I don't get what that's all about. There are literally endless amounts of actual African actors. So why would you get a Black American to play? Very, very strange. Maybe it's just to sell the movie or whatever. But if it's like not the lead role, then just get an actual African. Weird, man. And there are still Africans out there who are stars in Hollywood now. I forget the guy's name. He was in Blood Diamond and in Amistad and whatever. You know that African actor? I think he's Senegalese. He's well known enough. Chainsaw says Forrest Whitaker, Last King of Scotland. Yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. When you know a lot of African people like I do, you're used to what the real accent sounds like. When you know what their real accents sound like, you hear all these fake, like Black Americans trying to do African accent. It just sounds awful to me. Black Dynamite says they should have got the guy who played Adebisi from Oz. Yeah, he's still in stuff. And Adebisi was a great character in Oz. The best character maybe in Oz was Adebisi. See, that might be the biggest cardinal sin of all, Lou. Americans doing Jamaican accents. That really is a shocker. Yes, indeed, Black Dynamite. Caribbean accents get done dirty by American actors, for sure. Horrible. Chainsaw says, is it Idi Amin or is it Idi Amin? No, his name is Idi. I-D-I Amin. Idi Amin. The last king of Scotland. The former president of Uganda. Guryon says, don't think they even thought about these things until recently. I remember Black Hawk Down when the Somalis were played by actors of West African descent. Yeah, most of them were. There was a few actual Somalis, but most of them were like West Africans, which is totally off. Why you would do that is, again, beyond me, because it was a Ridley Scott film and it was full of British actors. London is literally full of Somalis. I mean, it's not hard to find them. Bexy says, Hatman, are Jamaican girls more conservative than Jamaican UK girls? They're probably less conservative, but it depends where in Jamaica. You can find some conservative girls in the country in Jamaica that live in little, very small towns and villages. If you're talking about like the city girls from Kingston, Spanish Town, anywhere around there, no, they're far less conservative than British Jamaican girls. Bexy says Jamaican girls are pretty Christian though, right? No. No, in terms of actual practicing, living by the principles, no, not at all. Not at all. Not in the cities. Spanish Town, Kingston girls are ratchet as hell. If you're familiar with that terminology, extremely ratchet. Extremely ratchet. LeBierre says, do you find African women more appealing than Caribbean women? Yes. Shout out to Robbo Roberts. I'm glad my Patreon was able to help you. Bexy says, so I'm taking it you wouldn't date a Jamaican girl. Well, I have dated Jamaican girls in the past, but I would prefer not to date one ever again. For sure. I would prefer to never date one again. LeBierre says, so you're telling me there are no ratchet African women? How have you managed to come to that conclusion? I've never suggested that there are no ratchet African women. You asked me, do I prefer African women over Jamaican women? And I said, yes. I never said there are no ratchet African women. There are ratchet women in the majority of countries in the world, right? Outside of, well, even in hardcore Muslim countries, you'll find ratchet women. They're just not, generally not Muslim women. They might be foreigners or whatever, but yeah, I definitely prefer African women over Jamaican women, 1,000,000%. But Africa's an entire continent. Jamaica is just one country. Now, Black Dynamite says you got to go to villages in Africa these days to find conservative women. You don't necessarily need to go to villages. You can find them in the cities and towns and whatever. Just don't go to bars and nightclubs. I mean, that should be universal in any country around the world. You should never go to bars and nightclubs to find a conservative, good woman. You know what I mean? Star Fox says, never heard of a ratchet Muslim woman. Well, there are loads of them in London. When I say Muslim, I mean they are from Muslim families and nominally Muslim. They don't really practice, but if they're filling out a form, they'd put Muslim, right? But they're ratchet as hell. Chainsaw says, I was in Kenya, and then women are so money hungry, never seen anything like it in comparison. Well, the two places in Africa where feminism is quite strong are Kenya and South Africa, those two places. And it just so happens that those are the two places that are the most popular with tourists from the West. Everyone goes to Africa, the majority of people, they want to go to Kenya or South Africa because those countries are quite developed in terms of infrastructure. So they attract a lot of tourism. But they're also by far the most westernized countries in Africa, those two, Kenya and South Africa. So don't go to those places if you want it. I mean, you can still find conservative women in those countries, but it's not easy. LeBier says, I can't imagine ratchet African women. That's why I asked. Oh, there's loads of ratchet African women in South Africa in particular. I mean, it's pretty much the standard now in South Africa for the women to be ratchet. They've all got tattoos and loads of piercings, and they're very ghetto and stuff like that in Johannesburg, in Durban, Cape Town. Just full of ratchet African women. Full of them. Nova says, Hatman, what can you suggest for a bigger guy trying to get in fight shape for an upcoming amateur fight? Was there anything you found that helped with gas tank, especially in your career? Early on, when you're a novice and your mind is full of doubts and anxiety about a fight, stick to the basics. Keep your hands up and use your jab, because the other guy, presumably you're going to be matched appropriately against another novice, so he's going to be nervous too. Let him be the one that's trying to do too much, flailing around trying to land a million shots. You just keep your hands nice and tight, guard nice and tight, and pop him with a jab as he comes in. When you're dealing with novices, it's often the person that just does the basics better that ends up winning the fight. So keep your hands up and pop a jab in his face. Don't try and overcomplicate things. You're a pair of novices. No one's going to be in there looking like Alexander Usyk, right? So just stick to the basics. Keep your hands up and jab. And things will come off of that. I mean, sometimes you can just win a whole fight with your jab alone. But at the very least, the jab will allow you to have some success. And that guard will stop you from, getting beat up in the fight, hopefully. And even if you lose, you'll feel more confident going into the next fight because you didn't get hurt and you managed to keep your guard up and land some jabs. Goyon says, feminism in Africa probably isn't as obnoxious and as absurd as Western feminism, though. Not in Kenya yet. But in South Africa, it's terrible. Feminism in South Africa is terrible. Believe you me, it is terrible in South Africa. Warren says, only place I want to go is Ghana. That's where my roots are meant to be. So they say, but my background is from the West Indies, but sadly I'm from Birmingham. Yeah, I have no real interest in going to Ghana. To be honest, it's very expensive as African countries go. You don't really get much bang for your buck. And it's not the most dangerous place in Africa. But there are a lot of stories now of particularly like black Americans and black people from Europe and Britain getting attacked and robbed in Ghana, because there's a lot of like resentment. Same in Gambia towards this, citizenship thing where if you're Caribbean or black American and you can prove some kind of DNA link to Ghana, they give you instant citizenship and they give you, or they used to at least give you land and whatever. And a lot of the locals in Ghana were very resentful about that. And they'd be targeting black people from America and Europe to rob them and kill them. And yeah, there's a lot of that going on there. So personally, Ghana is not somewhere that I'd want to go. LeBierre says, how can Africans resent African Americans? Well, because, as I say, Ghana has got some kind of policy where if you can prove a genetic link to Ghana as a black American, they will give you land, or they used to give you land, and they'll give you citizenship. And so when the locals, many of whom are very poor, much poorer than any black Americans, right? When they see these black Americans coming over who look like they have money and they're being given land by the government, which these locals in Ghana have never managed to get land their whole lives, some of them, that's why they get resentful. They're like, why are these foreigners getting all these privileges? I mean, it's the story in most countries, right? The foreigners are always criticized and attacked for getting quote unquote privileges. And that's how a lot of African people, Ghanaians see black Americans. They're looking at them like, why you're not even from Ghana. You're from America and you're coming over here. Right? Our government's giving you stuff. Like, yeah. Okay, Ian, you're talking rubbish, mate. You're saying it's false. It's not false. It is a fact that loads of black Americans, not just through videos I've seen on the internet, people I know personally. I know Ghanaian people personally who told me years ago about black American people getting killed for their land in Ghana. It's a fact. I guess you're Ghanaian and you're offended by facts, but it is a fact. And there's an uptick of it in the last few years. In Ghana and also in Gambia, those two countries in West Africa, there's like an uptick in attacks on black people coming from Europe and coming from America. It's just facts. Have I been to Nigeria? I have got no desire to go to Nigeria. Ian says, I've lived in Ghana for 20 years. And I'm not saying that I never said Ghana's got a really high murder rate. I don't know what you're saying. I never said Ghana's got a really high murder rate. I said there's been murders, a lot of murders there of black people from Europe and from America. That's a fact. I never said Ghana's got a really high murder rate overall. In fact, I said earlier on that Ghana is not one of the more dangerous countries in Africa. I already said that. So I don't know what point you're trying to make. I'm speaking facts and you seem to be, barking up the wrong tree. Ghana is a lot safer generally than many other countries in Africa. But there are targeted attacks by disgruntled locals on black people from America and Europe. It is what it is. Gon says, have you been to Zambia? No, I haven't. Jackie Boy Johnson says, was Eggate faked? I don't know. I don't know whether it was faked and pre-agreed between Eubank and Benn. It's possible it was. It's possible it was real. To me, it doesn't really make much difference. Cloud says, Ben Shalom got buoyed by Eubank. How embarrassing. Yeah, Eubank tends to do that. OA says, did you see the interview between Eddie and Shalom? Well, I saw the exchange during the press conference. But in terms of an interview after the press conference, no. EJ says that's not why they'd stick out. Many African Americans are indistinguishable from Africans. They stick out due to cultural reasons. Yeah, that's true. It's not really because of any, mixing or anything like that. Many African Americans are completely indistinguishable from Africans from the Congo and West Africa. Totally indistinguishable physically. They stand out because of the clothes they wear, because of their mannerisms, their accent, if you actually, if somebody hears them talking. And as that person said, because of cultural reasons. They don't understand the cultural sensibilities in the African countries they go to. Even the walk, is different. I mean, for example, most Africans can tell. So, for example, people with African parents who are born and raised in the UK, when they visit Africa, their family over in Africa, the local Africans can tell that they were not raised in Africa, often just by looking at them. They can tell that, okay, you're coming from Europe or America somewhere. Even though genetically they're 100% African, they can tell just by looking at them, this person wasn't raised here. The mannerisms are different. Even the skin tone is kind of different because they haven't been under the African sun for their whole lives. Warren Williams says, new video just popped up. Ben said Eubank is getting filled in. Bexy says, Hatman, is African food good? That's like asking, is European food good? It's an entire continent. But yeah, there is a lot of African food that I like. And some that I don't like, depending on the country and culture and so on. OA says, is Eubank actually from Africa? Oh, Chris Eubank is Jamaican. His parents are Jamaican. So, all black people are genetically African, but in terms of his past centuries of lineage, he's Jamaican. Now, Cloud says, Hatman, who is your pick in this fight? I reckon it'll go the distance, and I'm leaning towards Eubank. Well, I was assuming that somebody was talking about Eubank Sr. because they said Eubank rather than Eubank Jr. Yeah, Eubank Jr. is half Jamaican, half English. But I assumed the person was talking about Sr., who is Jamaican on both sides. Black Dynamite said, I heard Eddie Hearn say it's on site. Chainsaw says, I didn't know Bob Marley's father was English till recently. Yeah, Bob Marley's dad was English, but he was actually Syrian by ancestry. Bob Marley's dad was a Syrian Englishman. Yeah, an Englishman of Syrian descent. Okay, Ian is still pushing this thing. The UK is more dangerous than Ghana. No, it isn't. The UK isn't more dangerous than Ghana. The UK has a murder rate of 1. Ghana's murder rate is higher than that. 1 point whatever it is. It's lower than Ghana's. Now, the UK is not more dangerous. That's completely untrue. And, Ghana being a third world country, obviously there is a lot more unreported violent crimes and murders and whatnot in Ghana than there is in the UK. But even according to the official stats, the UK is more dangerous. Ghana is more dangerous than the UK. I know you're obviously a very patriotic Ghanaian, but I don't know where you're going with this. The stuff I said is facts. Go on YouTube, look up people talking about their first-hand experiences, English people there being, and Black Americans in particular being killed because of their land and stuff like that. Ghanaian people I know personally. I'll give you some Ghanaian names. I'll tell you, I know Ghanaian people. Yeah? Kiera Mateng is a Ghanaian, surname of a Ghanaian person I know. Kiera Mateng. Mensa, another surname of a Ghanaian person I know. Tumasi, another surname of a Ghanaian person. I know Ghanaians, and they've told me these things themselves from years ago, as well as many, many stories you can see online about people from Black Americans and whatnot being attacked for their land, killed for their land and stuff like that in Ghana. So, come on. Stop it. Someone says Rollo Tomasi. No, the surname I know is Tumasi. 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 And Mensa, of course. Mensa, Ansa, these are very common Ghanaian names. Chale, of course, that's what they're always calling you in Ghana, Chale. Every country has their challenges. Every country has their BS. It's just a matter of which BS you're willing to deal with, There's plenty of stuff that I don't like in the country I'm living, but I'd rather put up with that than the BS in other countries. It's just what type of BS you're willing to live with. But every country's got their BS. King says, do you think Vidal Riley could be world champion? Yes, I do. Partly because the cruiserweight division is quite weak. Other than Jayo Pataya. And when he moves up, presumably that won't be too far away in the future, it's going to be wide open. So I reckon Vidal Riley could pick up a world title. Okay, Temi says, which trainer will fit AJ's style to make him more better than he is and cover his flaws? I think AJ's a lost cause at this stage. I think he's a lost cause. Dr. Wu says HMRC BS. Oh, God, I know all about their BS. Dear, oh dear. Shout out to Ocean Blue for the super chat. He says, thanks For the X-Files advice, bro. It's all good, my brother. Gun says, these ladies in the UK and other Western countries making me want to become a passport bro. Toxic femininity is one hell of a drug. Well, I call it weaponized feminism, and it is awful. It's so difficult to pair bond in the West now. For people, let's say, below the age of about, maybe even below the age of 40, but certainly below the age of 35, it's so difficult to pair bond. Bexy says, Hatman, do you remember seeing much propaganda in the 90s? Well, there's always propaganda. It's just what type of propaganda, right? So the nature, the type of propaganda now is a bit different to back in the days. Ian says, Hatman, Ghana is probably similar to Costa Rica from what I see in your videos. No, Costa Rica is more dangerous than Ghana, I'll tell you that. Obviously, there are safe areas in Costa Rica. But, yeah, Costa Rica is more dangerous than Ghana, for sure. Being in Central America, you know, there are, I don't want to say too much, but it's one of the safer places in Central America and Latin America in general, but it's not like Western safe. No, Costa Rica is substantially more dangerous than Ghana. I would say that. Substantially more dangerous. There's a lot more guns in Costa Rica than there is in Ghana. But most of the places which are dangerous in Costa Rica are not places you would want to go anyway. You know? They're not places where foreigners tend to live or visit. So you don't generally come across crime and whatnot if you're living in Costa Rica. Because you're not going to be going to them areas unless you're, I don't know, looking for something that you shouldn't be looking for. And some foreigners do come to Costa Rica and start looking for things they shouldn't be looking for, right? Find themselves in sketchy towns and whatnot. LeBierre says AJ should drop down to 240. I think AJ should just retire. You know what I mean? He should just retire. And maybe he's not far off retiring. Star Fox says, would you ever live in the US, and if so, where? I wouldn't want to live in the US. I don't like the social dynamics in the US. The US racial politics is really ugly. So I wouldn't want to live there. I mean, I like some things about the US, of course. Just from a personal perspective, I like a lot about their constitution. You know, the way that they have certain rights enshrined in law that most other countries don't have, like personal human rights, individual rights that they have enshrined in the American Constitution. Most other countries don't have them, including the right to free speech. A lot of people don't realize that Britain doesn't actually have in law a right to free speech. A lot of people are completely oblivious to that. America has it. This is why in the UK you can be prosecuted for things like hate speech. In America you can't, because the First Amendment doesn't allow it. Yep, as Kylie says there, people have been sent to prison for tweets in the UK. And, my thing is, as long as you're not inciting violence, it doesn't matter whether I like what you say or don't. I don't think you should be going to prison for it. Do you know what I mean? A Chainsaw said, should people be allowed to carry firearms in the UK like in the US? Well, that's down to the public to decide on that. And it would seem as though most people in the UK don't think it's a good idea to have the right to bear arms like in America. And so if that's the will of the people, then that is what it is. On a personal level, as an individual, I would like the right to bear arms. Personally, I would like to have that right myself. But most British people, it would seem, do not want that right. Yeah, as Ocean Blue said, if I lived in a country where I had the right to bear arms, I'd be armed to the teeth. I'd be armed to the teeth. I like the thing in America where if anyone trespasses on your property, you could just blast them. Yeah, I like that. Like, why should I have to, take it easy on a burglar or a home invader and tackle them in such a way that I make sure that I, come on. If you're burgling my house or home invading or anything like that, I would like the right to just take your damn head off. Like, what the hell are you doing? Do you know what I mean? Crazy. I'd like the right to be able to protect my property and my family with lethal force. Yeah, they have chainsaw. I remember there was a guy who I think was a farmer years ago. He was an elderly guy. And some idiot broke into his house and he shot the guy and they put him in prison. I was like, dear, oh dear, oh dear. How's that? That's the kind of thing that upsets me. Do you know what I mean? LeBierre says You definitely can't shoot someone for trespassing. Burglary, yes. Trespassing, no. Are you sure that's the same in all states? Because there are huge diversity of gun laws in America. You know, all I know is that as a man, I would like the right to defend my property and my family. Not have to be cowering away and at the mercy of criminals who, you know, break into my property because they're armed and I'm not. I don't like that dynamic. And before I wind this one down here, just going to ask a question about a film. Because I saw that film the other day, The Monkey, which was diabolically bad. Had to walk out halfway. It was so boring. There's one film which is also getting mixed reviews. Some people are saying it's really good. Other people are saying it's terrible and boring. And that is, God, I'm probably going to butcher the name here. Is it Nosferatu? How do you pronounce it? Let me look it up again. Nosferatu. Has anyone seen Nosferatu? If you have, what did you think of it? The new Nosferatu film. Anyone seen it? Ryan says it's boring as hell. Oh dear. Jackie Boy says not seen it but meant to be good. Not seen. So the one person who's seen it says it's rubbish. Anyone else seen Nosferatu? Kyle says he's never heard of it. Okay, Joey says it's decent. Stryker says he loved it. It's basically Dracula. Yeah, I know it's like a Dracula film. For copyright reasons, many decades ago, they called it Nosferatu, apparently, rather than Dracula. Ryan says it's a poor version of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Director did The Northman, which was great. Yeah, I like The Northman. I like that film. Star Fox says better than Captain America. Well, I'd never be watching a Marvel film at this point. Yeah, I like The Witch too. That had the guy from The Office in it. You know, the Yorkshireman from The Office with the deep voice and a mustache. He was in The Witch. Yeah, that was a pretty good film. I like the way that they had the characters, the actors speaking in period English. You know, English from the 1500s, although they didn't have the accent of spoken English from back then, but they were using the kind of words and whatnot and lingo of like 1500s, America. There were English settlers in America in the 1500s or whatever it was. Nova says it's not good at all, not worth it. So very mixed reviews even here in the live chat. Some people are saying it's really good and other people are saying it's awful. Okay, Greg says, went to the cinema to see Nosferatu. The world Egger has created is incredible, but the payoff is poor. There's very little substance for its running time. Okay. So you're saying style rather than substance. LeBier says Hatman ducked the argument about guns once he realized he was overmatched. I've got no idea what you're talking about. I didn't duck any argument. No idea what you're talking about. I simply asked you, are you sure that you can't shoot people for trespass in every part of America because there's widely divergent gun laws? It wasn't an argument. I was asking you a question. The director did The Lighthouse. Yeah, I haven't seen that film. That's got, is Gerard Butler in that, in The Lighthouse? BG London says, vampire thing, not my genre. Well, I definitely liked Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman. And although I didn't like Keanu Reeves in Bram Stoker's Dracula. I didn't like him. Didn't like his accent. It was awful. But Gary Oldman was great. He was creepy as hell in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Mad creepy. LeBier says, are you sure is passive-aggressive English for I don't think you're right? It wasn't passive-aggressive anything. I don't do passive-aggressive. If I'm going to be aggressive, I'll be straight up aggressive with you. I don't do the passive stuff. It was just a question. Are you sure? I don't know. I'm not an expert in the laws in every single American state. That's why I'm asking you, and presumably neither are you, right? So I'm asking you, you're an American, right? You tell me, is it like that in every state? Don't presume I'm being, I don't do the passive aggressive thing. If I'm being aggressive to someone, I'll just tell you straight up and down on the live stream, suck your mum. I don't do passive aggressive. I either do proper aggressive or civil. That's it. There's no in between. Lost Boys. Yeah, that was a good film back in the days. Oldman is so versatile. Yeah, Oldman is a very good actor. For me, the creepiest Dracula I've seen. Back in the days, there was, what's his name now? The famous English actor. Flipping, Christopher Lee. He was obviously a very creepy Dracula as well. Back in the Hammer horror days. Christopher Lee, who played Saruman in Lord of the Rings. Count Dooku in the Star Wars prequels. From Dusk Till Dawn, the Tarantino flick, you know. Wow, somebody said the Joker 2 was good. Okay, I mean, everyone's got the right to like rubbish films. There are some rubbish films I like. And speaking of rubbish, Labier, you're now just talking rubbish. I speak with authority until I can't make a logical argument there. What are you talking about? You're just talking rubbish now. You said, oh, you definitely can't shoot someone for trespass. I said, okay, are you sure? Is it the same in every state? And now you're trying to make it into something that it's not. Like, you're an idiot, man. You're just here for foolishness. Get him out of it, idiot, man. I'm just here to talk rubbish. Man's a beg. Yeah, there you go. No idea what his point is. It's coming here to make something out of nothing. Do I like RoboCop? Not particularly. You know, I saw the RoboCop films back in the days. I was never really a massive fan. It was a cool concept at the time, but, you know. Encircled, exactly that. RoboCop is vintage 80s cheese. Precisely what it is. Eddie pushed Shalom, did he? I'll have to go watch that. Training Day or John Wick? Training Day all day long. Training Day by a million miles over John Wick. I don't think them films are in the same universe, to me personally. Training Day way better. John Wick is a popcorn movie, whereas Training Day is like a serious film. Has anyone seen The Prestige? Yeah, Prestige is a great film. Great film. Directed by Christopher Nolan. Warren Williams says Christopher Lee was just creepy looking, period. The man with a golden gun. Yeah, he was. Guryon says American Gangster is the best Denzel film. I have to totally disagree. For me, that was one of my least favorite Denzel films. But hey, you know, everyone's entitled to their own taste, right? But for me, I was never really a fan of American Gangster. Much prefer Training Day and a whole host of other Denzel films. Chainsaw says favorite Samuel L. Jackson movie, probably Pulp Fiction. Royale with cheese. Okay, somebody says American Gangster is top 10 of all time. I don't think it'd make my top 100, to be honest. Some people mentioning Man on Fire. That's a good film. Denzel Washington. Even Flight is a good film. You know the one where he's like an alcoholic airline pilot? That's a good film. Vincent says, did you like The Irishman? No, I thought it was terrible. By far the worst Scorsese film I've ever watched. Terrible. And the CGI was just appalling in The Irishman. I've seen better deepfakes. Literally seen better deepfakes made by randoms online than the CGI in The Irishman. It was terrible. Anyway, peeps, gonna wrap this one up. Shout out to everybody for joining me once again on this live stream. Much appreciated. And a special thank you to everybody who donated via Super Chat. It's been great chatting to you. Take care, be good, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right? I'm out.